Alright, that new Dexter Resurrection episode was wild. So coming off episode 6 with the kind of cliffhanger we were left with the Gemini killer being revealed that he's actually twins and that there's 2 Gemini killers. Like at first when that car pulls up, I had no idea who was about to hop out of that car. And he was blasting some pretty good ass music too. So I was like, who's about to come out of this car? So then seeing the Gemini killer come out of the car, I was flabbergasted. But after that kind of cliffhanger, I was kind of hooked and waiting for Friday for this new episode to drop. And it did not disappoint. Like, I say this every video I make on Dexter, this might be the best episode we've got. But really, like, not only was this episode funny as fuck, but also from the writing to the dialogue and performance that Michael C. Hall and the other actors give, it's just phenomenal. The lore drops we get on Leon Prader, and the insane 100 million IQ plays Dexter makes. And of course, the kind of rivalry of Angel and Dexter, Angel deadass shows up to this motherfucker's house and surprises him. That shit's wild. Anyway, I could keep going on and glazing this shit. Let's just talk about episode 7 already. Now the episode starts literally right after the last episode ends. Dexter's boarding a helicopter and the last guest arrives, which is revealed to be the Gemini killer, the guy that Dexter just whacked. So, it's kind of awkward between them. Dexter's kind of looking at him like he's a zombie. But, honestly, everyone's kind of on edge. And, they kind of should be, Couple people from their little gathering are starting to go missing. Mia, aka Lady Vengeance, just got locked up. And even Leon Prader, who is usually a very, contempt character, he seems pretty on edge. He's snapping at people. He doesn't really have an answer for Lowell not being here. Why does someone have to use their fucking lawnmower when I'm trying to record a YouTube video? Anyway, Leon even, tells the group that Mia actually in prison. Everyone's kind of bewildered. Rapunzel over here starts to have a fucking mental breakdown. But anyway, Leon kind of calms the group down and invites them to have a toast for Mia. So they have a toast and then they head back in. Leon prepared some food for them. Dexter's kind of been pretending to be a vegan because Red Schmidt was a vegan. But I guess bro couldn't hold it together. And he basically explains to Leon I've been a vegan for a while, but seeing this food, it kind of makes me miss not being a vegan. And, Leon's like, oh, sure, have my sourced caviar from Iran, some rich guy shit. Anyway, after they eat, we come to find out that they're not just here to have a toast for Mia and, group up and talk. They're also here to have another show and tell, and Rapunzel is up first. Now, I actually kind of like Rapunzel. He seemed pretty chill, besides him targeting women for their ponytails and killing them. And, him being a serial killer. He's a pretty chill guy. But after seeing his presentation, I've come to the conclusion that the guy is a freak, and I'm really surprised that Dexter has not killed this guy first. The way he's laughing while subduing and killing this girl, it's just... Anyway, after Rapunzel's presentation, Dexter, aka Red Schmidt, aka the Dark Passenger, is up next. Dexter goes to the other room, and we get a pretty funny scene of Dexter kind of locking in, talking to himself in a mirror and kind of getting into the mode of a serial killer. After having his little pep talk with himself and locking in, he has his presentation, and it honestly is a pretty heartfelt presentation. This kind of impacts the crowd. Rapunzel's kind of shook, especially Leon Prader. I mean, the guy looks like he's almost in tears. Obviously, Dexter's, presentation definitely moved him. And it moved him so much to the point where, after the presentation, he calls Dexter to the side, and we get a massive, lore drop about Leon Prader and his history. He basically explains to Dexter, why I do all this, and the reasoning why is because, his parents were not only just killed by a drunk driver, but the drunk driver turned out to be a serial killer who Leon Prader got in contact with because he wanted to find out why he would do this to his parents. And he would visit him in the prison, and he basically befriended him. And the guy admitted to Leon Prader that his parents were not the first. He's killed people before, and he does this to kind of release his inner demons. And, Leon expresses to Dexter that he hasn't really been reminded of this relationship he had with this serial killer until Dexter gave his little speech he did a couple minutes ago. And it kind of reminded him of the relationship he had with him. The reason why he doesn't have a relationship with him anymore is because the serial killer died. And after this, Leon was kind of left lost of what to do and had to kind of counsel with his inner demons of his parents dying. So he starts having these gatherings and, bringing around serial killers. And, he explains to Dexter, like, you aren't like the other ones. The other ones are here for money, but, you're here for something else. You're here to really get honest and, like, express yourself, and he respects Dexter for that. Anyway, after this scene, we cut to Dexter joining up back with the group. He notices the Gemini killer, at least his twin, is sitting by himself. So, he takes this opportunity to go kind of sit down with him. And, I had no idea what they were going to talk about. I thought it was going to be some kind of awkward scene where Dexter's trying to, like, befriend him or something, to gain his trust. But in reality, the scene went, like, completely different than that. Like, Dexter immediately, like, drops that he knows he's a twin, which I'm like, damn, like, okay, Dexter, you do you, man. And, like, at first, Gemini's kind of denying it, but Dexter keeps pressing him, and Gemini starts to get a little upset, and then Dexter diffuses the situation, kind of, and starts to kind of, like, fanboy him, similar to what he did with his twin. And, the Gemini and Dexter, they start to kind of befriend each other, I guess. Gemini starts filling in Dexter on, how he keeps this a secret. He talks about how he has some secret form of communication, and immediately when Gemini says this, Dexter's like, oh, like leaving notes at a bookstore? And Gemini's like, what? Dexter then goes to explain, oh, I'm such a huge fan. I kind of stalked you after the first group meeting. So Gemini's like, oh, okay. And then Dexter's like, I heard twins, they feel pain at the same time if another one, feels pain. And Gemini's like, oh, I don't know if that's true. And Dexter's like, did you feel a short pain in your chest last night? That was me probably killing your twin brother. Gemini starts to freak out, and I want to remind you guys, Dexter is whispering this stuff into his ear. He's like, I killed your brother, into his ear. So Gemini freaks out, he breaks the glass he's holding, and immediately starts to slash at Dexter. One hits, and he slashes his wrist, and Dexter's like, oh, okay, you hit first, word, I'm gonna kill you. He tries to stab Dexter again with the glass. He grabs his arm and fucking twists the glass back into his own neck, collapsing him to the ground. And, Gemini's bleeding out from his neck. There's a fucking sharp glass into his neck. And, he's trying to mumble out the words that you killed my brother. As the group notices, they're coming over. Charlie, Rapunzel, and Leon, they're both running over. So, Gemini's trying to get out his words of, you killed my brother. And Dexter's like, you ain't saying shit. And he starts pulling the glass and stabbing it into his neck further to, silence him. The group comes over. Charlie has a gun on him. Dexter's hands are up in the air. And, Gemini's dead. Dexter starts explaining that he tried to kill him. He started going on about how he's going to kill everyone here, just like he did to Lau. Everyone believes Dexter except Charlie, because Charlie knows that, the Gemini killer, why would he do this? Plus, he kills in twos, and, Dexter's only one person. Why would he just try to kill Dexter in front of a group of people, especially with someone that's armed? But, Leon isn't, gonna realize that shit. He just had a heart-to-heart with Dexter. Dexter's pretty close with Leon right now, and, Rapunzel, he's a fucking pussy. He already wants to get out of there and go back to Wisconsin or whatever the fuck. So basically, Dexter pulls another self-defense and gets out of this scot-free. The only one who really suspects that he did something was Charlie, but besides that, he's scot-free. But, Dexter's kind of in a rush because he planned to go on a college tour with Harrison, and he is late because, he had to deal with Gemini and the whole gathering or whatever. So he's late as fuck, and while Harrison was waiting for, his father to come on a college tour, he starts talking it up with some fine shit who happens to be the college tour. Anyway, the college tour starts without Dexter, and the college tour basically finishes up. However, there's one more place to go, a lecture about forensic science, I believe. And, earlier in the episode, Harrison expressed how he is interested in maybe becoming a cop or something, in criminal justice. So he's interested in this lecture. And as he walks into the lecture, he notices someone standing next to the professor. And it's none other than Detective Claudette Wells, the detective that claimed Harrison is still a suspect in the Ryan Foster murders, the lady that grilled him, And, you could tell bro does not want to be there. He even, turns around and tries to leave, but, some girl's behind him, and he's like, why are you trying to, keep moving forward? I'm trying to get into the classroom. What are you doing? So he's kind of forced to, sit down, and she notices that he's there, so she's kind of, staring at him. The lecture starts to go on, and you think she's about to talk about the Ryan Foster murders because She explains, oh, I'm about to show you guys something that has been on the headlines before, but in reality, it's just a New York Ripper, and we get some pretty graphic images and even audio from the New York Ripper. Anyway, as the presentation is going on, Dexter comes in the room. He's late, arriving at the college tour. Finally, he sits down next to Harrison, and Dexter's like, is that really her? And then Harrison's like, yeah, it's her. This really had me on the edge of my seat because I'm like, she's about to say something to Dexter and Harrison about them being here. Especially when, she has Dexter now on her radar because of Angel Batista kind of ratting Dexter out. But, as Dexter and Harrison trying to leave the presentation, she kind of stops them and, she kind of presses them. She's like, oh, you must be Harrison's father. And Dexter kind of like snarkily fucking replies, oh yeah, good detective work. And, then Detective Wells asks Harrison, why he's here. She's kind of surprised to see him here. And Harrison explains, after the whole Ryan Foster thing and getting interrogated and seeing how much the police care about this stuff, he was inspired to go out and become a cop himself, which this shit had me laughing. Like, there's no way she's believing whatever that excuse is. So then she replies, oh, so you're following in the footsteps of your father. And Dexter's like, how do you know that I was in the police department? And Detective Wells is like, oh, your old friend Angel Batista came by. And Dexter's like, oh, shit. So Dexter's response to this is immediately trying to make Angel look like an insane person, which he honestly does pretty well. Dexter honestly really does not give a fuck. At least it seems like it. He doesn't really give a shit about Angel, until the last scene, which we'll talk about. But even in the car with Harrison's like, you don't really care Angel's in New York hunting you right now in contact with the police department? And Dexter's like, oh, he'll get tired and miss Cuban food and then go back to Miami. But yeah, this is when the episode starts to wrap up. They leave the presentation and the college tour. And, as Dexter's coming home, he goes downstairs and, he has the glass from the Gemini killer still in his pocket with his blood on it. So he puts his blood into a blood slide. He starts hearing some kind of Miami type music upstairs. He's like, reminds me of Miami. Angel. He realizes the music coming from upstairs is actually being played by Angel, chilling and dancing. Literally, he's doing the salsa with fucking Blessing. They're having a ball up there. Dexter comes in, he's like, what are you doing here? You know what, let me just play the clip of Dexter walking in, because it's just, dude, it's just peak.
There you go. Dexter! Surprise, hermano.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Like, I was not expecting Angel to drop a surprise, hermano. Like, I was just not expecting that shit. Anyway, Dexter needs to get Angel kind of out of the house. So he basically offers Angel to, give him a ride home. So then we cut to them in the car and they're not saying a word to each other. I mean, look at Dexter's face. This guy, he's mad right now. He's fuming. Dexter basically threatens Angel to stay away from him, his family, his loved ones. And Dexter's like, you really think I'm gonna back down after what happened to Dokes, Maria, Deb? And, Dexter's like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to get into this. And Angel's like, or what? So then Dexter stops the car and literally he pulls a fucking Walter White on him. He's basically like, if you really think I am what you say I am, then you should tread carefully. Like, that has some Walter White ass shit. Anyway, Dexter basically kicks him out of the car. And, I noticed Angel kind of, like, had something in his hand and put it down as he was leaving the car. So I'm like, oh, what did he just do, bro? Did he have some audio device recorder on him, recording everything Dexter was saying? Was it a tracker? And I was right with the second option. It was a tracker. This motherfucker left his AirPods in his car so he can track him with the Find My iPod, or what the fuck? Find My AirPod app on the iPhone. Like, just 100 IQ plays over from Angel Batista. Angel Batista actually might solve a case for once. Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. If you guys like this type of content, please subscribe and like and leave comments. I read all the comments and I really appreciate all the support. It motivates me to keep making this content and it just shows me you guys like it. Anyway, yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.